George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Arel Moodie is in the house, motivational speaker, author, TV show host. Adding that to the resume. I hear you, my brother. Disney Plus. Check out the brother in the show. We'll get the name of that show in just a moment. But Arel is a worldwide trainer, speaker, author, etc. It's a new year, 2023. And so we thought it a great idea to bring Arel in to talk about your best year yet. It's 2023, baby. It's your best year yet. And Arel has learned some things in 2022 that he says will help us all have the best year yet in 2023. So Arel Moodie, welcome to, I know I didn't give you all your props and all the
so good, man. You know, it's not my first rodeo on Inspiration for the Nation. It's not my first rodeo, so hopefully people are like, we know this dude.
We know this dude. A great,
but yeah, the Disney Plus show is probably the newest thing. So I'm hosting a Disney Plus show called Family Reboot. So super excited to be one of the hosts of that. It's a show produced by Kelly Ripa. So just, that's kind of the new thing in addition to the speaking and publishing and profound masterminding and have a software company I'm building as well. But I really want to jump more into the ideas versus my background. So I'm really excited about the platform to share it.
Let's talk about it. All right. So we've been talking about goal setting, but and then with the profound mastermind. And so let's start with, what did you learn about in 2022 that changed for you in your approach to goal setting, especially as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so what I realized is that, and I learned this, and I wish I could remember the source or I'd credit it, but the idea that most goal setting actually sets you up for a mindset of lack. Which is really fascinating, because you would think most goal setting is setting you up to achieve a goal, but allow me to demonstrate. Mm-hmm. When I say, I wish I had 6-pack abs, or I say, I wish I had $100,000 per year in salary.
Right.
What's being implied in that statement is that you are lacking fitness. You are lacking financial wellness right now, because you don't want something unless you don't have it, right?
Right.
So most goals actually are putting our goals into the future. And what we're constantly reminding ourselves is that our present state is lack, not good enough, and basically sucks. Because why would I want the extra money, the 6-pack abs, and all those things if I had them already? So when we write down our goals, we go, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. What we're actually constantly programming into our minds is, I don't have this, I don't have that. I'm lacking this. So there's this idea that I love, which is a book that I read called Future Self Now. And the concept behind it is you actually go into the future and ask yourself, who is my future self? So let's take a year into the future, which would be fine. So we're listening to this early 2023. So, Happy New Year, everyone. But you would say it's 2024. I'm so grateful because in this year, I've accomplished this, 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 and this. So instead of it being, this is a thing that I want, so you're looking at from the present into the future, you actually go into the future and look back on the past as if it's already happened. Now, what's fascinating about that is that instead of experiencing a feeling of lack or I don't have, what you're actually experiencing is a sense of gratitude and appreciation, which, the law of attraction and The Secret has been around for a very long time. I happen to subscribe to it as someone who grew up in the projects on welfare and very much attributes that lack of that kind of focus towards changing my life. But I think this is an element that has been wildly transforming. So now when I look at my goals, I have them written down and I say, it's 2023. I'm so grateful that, and then I write down everything that I want to achieve. So every time I say it, I'm putting myself into the future as if it's already happened. And this year, I would say there were only 2 goals that I did not achieve. And both of those goals, after I realized, were actually outside of my control. All the goals that were actually within my control, I was able to get. And I'm really, really fascinated by this idea.
Practice for me then how that would work. So let's put something real, or if you can make it up, however you want to do it.
Yeah.
And walk me through how that looks in the retrospective view.
Absolutely, right? So let's take a health goal. We'll say, so it might sound something like this. It's 2023 and I weigh 200 pounds and I finally have benched 300 pounds. I've added $100,000 to my net worth and I'm buying more assets and I'm excited about it more than I've ever been. So that's a way of saying, this has happened and I'm excited about it. It finally happened, or I feel so good about this. It's a very different way of saying, I wish this will happen, or I hope this will happen, right? So I'll read one of the things that I wrote. So I was actually just reviewing my 2022 goals, the ones I wrote down December 2021. And one of them, one of the businesses that I started, co-founded with Jeff Knaus and Adam Weitzman this year is called Profound Mastermind. So it's a group of the top business folks, top 100 business folks in upstate New York. And this is what I said, and I want to read this. I said, Profound Mastermind is humming. We have a great group of members and a really high retention rate. For every member that doesn't want to renew, we have 5 people waiting to take their place. We created a great experience for our members, and I've met some incredible people who are local to me, and I enjoy the network I have up here more than I ever had living in upstate New York. So I'm putting myself into a sense, and literally, that's exactly what we had happen. We had 100 members, we capped it at 100 members, and we had some members that did not renew, but for every member that didn't renew, when we opened up applications, we had a flood of applications come in. So by focusing on that, it's already happened, and talking about the experiences and the emotions that I'm feeling. I'm enjoying my network more than I've ever had. It's humming. We have a high retention rate. That presence is from the future looking backwards instead of from the present looking forward.
So how does that align with what we traditionally have said about goal setting? So your future self, we grew up, if you will, on this notion of SMART, measurable, the ART, SMART goals. I forgot what the ART.
Measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. How does that, or does that fit into this context, right? Because I would say one of the ways to modify that would be, it is now June something, and so that would be the time relevant. And we did, and all of I have reached. Well, I am 6. Yeah, talk to me about.
I think part of it too, right? I think part of it too, which I think is really, really important, is that it has to be a goal that, if you achieved, would make a measurable impact on your life, but you believe it's possible within this year. Mm-hmm. What happens for most of us is we set goals for the year that really are like 5-year goals, right? So if I'm 250 pounds and I want to get down to 200 pounds, dropping 50 pounds in 1 year is really hard. Like, that's not easy to do. So maybe we need to dial it back to something that's a little bit more attainable, right? So the specific, measurable, attainable part. However, this is what I think the key is. When you talk about the goal, you genuinely, and I know this sounds woo-woo, but you have to feel as if it's already happening.
Like, right? Really?
So let's play with this a little bit. So George, I want you to imagine me and you are having this conversation, right? Again, but it's 2024. Okay. What would have to happen in 2023 for you? And let's just choose one area of your life. It could be any area that you feel comfortable with. It could be fitness. It could be financial. It could be faith. It could be family. It could be friends, right? The 5 F's.
Yeah, that's all of the above. I'm looking for growth everywhere.
Right. So let's choose one. Choose one.
So I have grown. The first thing I think about is this property, Inspiration for the Nation, right?
Right.
It's 2024. Arel, I'm so excited. We have sold the show out. We have grown across multiple platforms. We've increased our subscriber base, and we have monetized the show in ways that I couldn't even think about in 2023. And we're now in our 21st year, and we're doing better than we've ever done. And we've seen the revenue projections that we wanted. We wanted to 10 times our revenue. which is what Profound says. But we wanted to, we set the mark to do that, and we've done it. And we're so excited about that. And I'm bursting out with enthusiasm as to how successful we have been. We are, given the work that we put in 2020.
Right. So George, just humor me, right? We're doing this for the listeners, not just for George here. Okay.
Yes.
So I want you to take a moment, really, right? So you said really wonderful things right there, and you really nailed it, right? So there's really not much I can say in terms of that. Here's the only thing I would do, and if you'd be so comfortable to like be on the spot with me here, is I want you to take a moment, close your eyes, and I want you to actually feel, right? Because right now it's 2024. It's not 2022 or 2023, right? It's 2024.
Yes.
And I want you to feel like, yo, we did that. Yo, I did that this year. Like, we are across multiple platforms. We've grown our subscriber. Our revenue model is, we did it this year. Like, yo, like you've already crossed the finish line. So feel like that, like, yes, like imagine yourself like telling your wife, like, babe, look, we did it. And like telling your kids, like, yo, like, so it's not like, yo, I want to, it's like, right. I did it. So just like, give me 10 seconds. I'll shut up. And just really go into the place like you've already crossed the finish line and you're reflecting on the experience to get there.
And for the radio listeners, we are in contemplation mode.
We are in contemplation mode, radio listeners. Thank you for listening on the radio. So what we're doing is we're actually going into the feeling, right? So I'm going to like navigate so we don't have dead space on the radio show, right? Like, it's like, yo, like imagine like who would you call? What would you do? Like, would you get that bottle of wine and be like, yo, let's crack open that, 2015 vintage we've been thinking about, or let's go get that scotch or the orange juice, whatever it is you think, right? And like, babe, let's go out. And like, which friends do you want to call? What frat brothers do you want to call to be like, yo, like, there's only 2 people in the world I could like celebrate this with, and it's you, right? So like that space, right? And whenever you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and come out of it. So instead of saying, yo, I want to do that this year, it's that feeling like, yo, like this happened. I did it. So number one, you've got to get in that space. That's the energy that actually vibrates with it, right? Then logistically, because sometimes that's a little bit too woo-woo, so I get that. So then what you do is you come back to this moment, and then you ask yourself, and then stay with me just for fun.
I'm with you.
It's 2024. You did it, bro. Like, yo, I did it. We got it in multiple platforms. So looking from your future self backwards, not thinking about what you should do, but remembering, what did you start doing? What's one of the many things I'm sure you would have to do, but what's one of the things that you're like, and you know what? One of the biggest things that I did in 2023 that like either I didn't think of doing, or I was afraid of doing, or I wasn't doing enough. I started doing this, and yo, it really took our platform streaming up, or our subscribers up. And like, this was a huge move. Like, do you know what does that initially hit you? Do you need some time to think about what would that be?
Well, so one of the things I did, Arel, is I made the ask. And so that was the one biggest thing, made the ask, different categories. The other thing is because I'm showing up in different spaces, some of that work is coming my way. So that's one thing. Secondly, I'm making additional investments in the platform so that I can appear the way I want to appear. And that was something that like any business person, you've got to make investments. I know that some of the pieces that need to happen with this, I got to find people that know how to do that. And I remember you and I talked many months ago about what are the platforms that I might need and resources to get some of those things. And now I've seen the manifestation of that in 2023. So those are 2 things I would say.
Yeah, see, so here's what I love about it, right? Here's what I love about it. Making the ask and being in more spaces where you can make the ask, right?
That's 3. That's another thing. Being in more, expanding the circle, expanding the circle.
And this is how powerful this is, right? So now you go, man, it's 2024 and we've gone, and you know what I had to do? Like, I had to go out there, and I realized the more I made the ask, let's get this platform out there, let's get the guests on there, let's do all those things. The more I made the ask, the more yeses I got. And the more yeses I got. So then you go, okay, that's my big domino. And my belief is that there are actually, people overcomplicate many goals. At most, there shouldn't be more than 3 main actions that one is focused on in an entire year. Lots of times people are like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It's like, no, you're not. Like, watch me work. It's like, no, you've watched yourself work for the last 20 years. Trying to do 27 goals is a bad thing, right? Like, what are the 3 big, and when I say big dominoes, I mean, if I did this one thing and focused on it and nailed it as best I could, it would almost knock down all the other dominoes in my life. So in your case, it might be like, yo, you know what? I'm going to spend X amount of hours per week putting myself in the position, finding the position, and making the ask. And I'm going to be wildly intentional. And that's why I think the goals are important to write down, because if we just think about them, we forget about them. But if you write it down and put it in that place, like, in the bathroom or kitchen or closet, where every day you'll see it, you'll go, okay, am I putting myself in a position to be in the spaces where I can make the right ask? Okay, I got to spend 5 hours doing that today, 3 hours doing that today, 2 hours doing that today, and then you start, getting really locked in, and then you hold on to the emotion and feeling of, yo, we did it. We got it more like that real visceral emotion. And then how did I do it? I kept making the ask. And then what happens is when you don't want to make the ask, because 9 times out of 10, whatever is going to get us to our goal, we don't want to do it. Our past self is trying to hold us to who we were, not let us be who we want to. You remember, well, I know what that feeling feels like, and I want to make that feeling and how I am get closer and closer together. And you do that through a process like this. It's really powerful, and it's honestly so simple that people can say that is stupid, or I get it conceptually. But it literally, when I look at my list, besides 2 things that were technically actually outside of my control, it's literally just nailed every single goal, like every single one.
We're talking with Arel Moodie. Arel Moodie is our guest. He is a motivational speaker, author, television host, podcaster. And one of the things that we've asked Arel to do is to help us to goal set for 2023. And he's introduced a concept to us that allows us to go forward, imagining and feeling the success of the moment, but then going back into look at what I did to get there. And then those are the steps that I'm going to take to get there, because it's sort of a reflection back. My future self now was the concept in the book that a lot of this is based on.
Pulling the future version of yourself into the present until it's like this, like collision of present and future becoming one. And that's the magic, man. That's the magic.
And so what I appreciate about you, Arel, is not settling, well, this is the way I've always done it. And I want to talk about that, because in our process of growing and developing, I know I'll speak for myself. I got comfortable with the way it has always worked for me. And you said, yeah, that works, but is there something else? I want to talk about how one assesses that for themselves when we come back. Keep it locked. George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, your best year yet. Welcome back, George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, your best year yet, with our guest, Arel Moodie. Before the break, we asked Arel, someone who motivates people, speaks all over the country, how do you know that you've got to look at another way of doing things when you've been all right doing what you've been doing, right? Yeah. What does it take? Yeah, talk to me.
It takes 2 things, I think, which is kind of contradictory, but they have to coexist. The first is to realize that you have to hold 2 thoughts at the exact same time. The first thought is, I am special, I'm damn talented, and I'm really damn good at what I do. And then the other, at the exact same time, is I have I'm wildly inappropriate. I am fearful. I am lacking. I am scared, and I don't have much. Right? You have to actually hold those two ideas. What I think happens is some people hold I'm special, I'm amazing, and then they have no sense of their self. They have no sense of how inadequate they actually are, and they have this inflated sense of ego. Then you've got the other person who believes that they have no sense of self, and they have a totally deflated sense of ego, and they're fearful and all that stuff. So that what happens is this person who's fearful doesn't do anything, and this person who has this huge ego is shallow at best. If you actually can maintain both of those thoughts at the same time, what you say is, I have the ability to go do things, but I also realize I never know enough. I'm never smart enough. How could I be good enough because I know all of my idiosyncrasies, my flaws, everything that I've been through. I know what my inner thoughts are, which at night are not the greatest thoughts in the whole wide world. But then I look at these external things and I'm like, but I'm not the worst guy. And I've done a couple of things I can be proud of. So by holding those two conflicting ideas literally at the same time, it'll push you to take the actions you need to do, but also keep you humble enough to realize there's always more to learn. And what I've been fortunate enough, there's this old philosophical saying that says it's better to be the tail of a lion than the head of a fox. And what that basically means is you never want to be the best of the lowest rung. It's better to be the tail of the lion, which is like surrounded by the best of the best, but you're not really there. Because if you're the head of the fox, that means you're the best of like the little leagues, right? I don't want to be the best of the little leagues. I'd rather be in the pros, but be like on the bench, because at least I'm learning, I'm growing. It's getting me closer to being the most elite that I can be. And I think that practically speaking, one of the things I love about Profound is being around our Profound members. Many of them are on paper significantly more successful than me, like our members. My partners are significantly more successful than me in lots of ways. But then what happens is they look at me and go, well, Arel is more successful than me in like these ways. So it's important to be with, like literally physically be with people who are performing at high levels, because then it helps you self-reflect and go, yo, I'm not really all that I could be. And I think that's healthy, as long as you also maintain, I'm amazing, I'm talented, I can get a lot of things done. And I know I'm really good at like these few things.
You know, when you, as I'm thinking about that, I'm like, you know, how do you humble yourself in that same context, knowing that everybody says you're so good at all of these things, right? When you look at all the people around you, what do you say? I got to work on this.
Well, I mean, the greatest thing is that in reality, the most successful people are actually only good at one or maybe two things. That's it. So there's no way you're an expert at lots of things. It's just not possible. That's not how people go. Like sometimes I meet people and they're like, I'm a model, I'm a cook, I'm a nail salon owner, I'm a singer, I'm a guitar player. I was like, you probably do all of those things okay, if you were being like honest, and none of them really well. So our goal is actually to do one or two things really, really well. And figuring out that is one's life journey. And then what you'll realize is like, yo, no matter what I do, I'm never going to be an expert at real estate. I won't. It's just not. Now, have I bought real estate? Yes. However, I always know that there's a guy that all he's doing, and a girl that all she's doing is learning about real estate, figuring it out, doing it. And then I want to be like, well, what books are they reading? And like, for me, my greatest joy. So one of my greatest skills is, I think, curiosity. I love to be curious. So if I find someone who's an expert, like I could sit down with you, George, and I'll ask you every question I could ever imagine. How do you get your voice to be so like projecting? What kind of microphones do you use? How do you choose your guests? What do you look for in your guests? What questions are you asking your guests? How do you know if you have a good guest? How do you get a bad guest to be better? How do you let a good guest? Like, I'm going to ask you all those questions. And in an hour of me peppering you, who's an expert in being a radio personality, I can gain in an hour what took you maybe 20 years. Now, will I have the same depth of knowledge that you do? Never. Will I have enough knowledge of how to be a radio personality to get started? 100%. So like, that's like the mindset of, I think the greatest skill set we could ever gain, and again, my personal opinion, doesn't have to be everyone's, is curiosity, like immense and intense curiosity. And then that will help you not only be humble, because if I'm curious, that means I'm accepting I don't know something, but that's how you also gain skills. And if you're really good at one or two things, you can kind of surround yourself with enough kind of peripheral knowledge to get to your goals in life, but you got to have one or two things you're really good at.
Are you ready for some vulnerability? Are you ready for that?
Let's go.
Are you ready?
I want some.
Yeah.
Give it to me, man.
So here we go. The thing that I think about right now is, and this goes to being a senior citizen, if you will, a real, for real, right? I know I'm so youthful and exuberant, but I'm a senior citizen, and thinking about do I have enough time? That's what is messing with me for real, for real. Is it too late? Why didn't I do this 20 years ago? If I, is it too late? And so, how would you, Arel, say, George, let that go? Or you say, well, that's a reality because there's a time, right?
Well,
time.
I think there's a multiple kind of faceted approach to it. I would take. Number one is, I've never met someone who actually thought they had time. I've never met like a 25-year-old hustler who was like, I got 40 years to figure this out, so I'm not really worried about it, right? Like everyone who's actually about something, I think the trait that you just mentioned is actually the trait of people who are about something. I know 30-year-olds who are like, yo, I just turned 30. I can't be messing around no more. I got to get the game. But then like at 65, you're like, I wish I was 30. Like, oh my God, I had 35 more years to get at it. So I think one of the traits is, one, no matter how old you are, no one thinks they have more time. So you have to feel that sense of time urgency, right? So that's number one. Number two, this is where I go spiritual, right? This is where I go spiritual. I don't believe God would put a thought in you that you are not worthy of having. I just don't think that's possible. So if you even have the thought, that means God said you are worthy of it. Now, here's what's fascinating. What if you achieve this at 65? Or I don't know how exactly old you are, right?
And that would be right. You're in the ballpark.
Right. I don't know senior citizen technically, but let's just assume.
Okay, so I would define senior citizen as 60 50. And above. Well, 60. Technically, right, a senior could be 50. Yeah.
Let's just say 60. Just for easy math, right? 60. Now, let's say one is 60 and they go, man, did I lose out on it? But let's say you actually say, no, I'm going to go hard. And you get this like renaissance period over the next 5 years. So at 65, you go from 60 to 65 and there's this huge spurt. What if there's another 6-year-old watching you going, I was going to quit. So George did it at 60, right? Like that, you've got to hold on to that person, right? And you got to say, look, either I'm going to look towards the Colonel Sanders of the world and be inspired by their story.
How old was he, by the way, when he started?
70 something.
Right.
He was at the end, but he was like, no, and he popped off and he went like into the crazy like stratosphere. So either A, you find someone, or you say, I want to be that for someone, right? Because I tend to find we'll fall a little short on our own endeavors, would you like imagine like, and now like, so that's the spiritual side, but now let's go to like the gut, okay? So I want you to imagine your kid walks up to you, right? Pick one of your kids and they go, Dad, it's over for me.
Oh man, right? I would not even try to hear that.
Dad, like, it's like, I think the boat, I seem like everyone else got it figured out by now, and like, I just ain't do it. Think about, you would be like, oh hell no, like no. But, so like, if you would give that advice to anyone, well then you got to live that advice. Like I think that's how congruency and authenticity works. If you give it, you got to live it. A lot of people give it, but they don't live it. So that's like, to me, the key of knowing, do you really believe the advice you're giving, is if you would apply it to yourself as well.
Talking with Arel Moodie, your best year yet is 2023. Here's the question for the audience. How do you bet on yourself? How do you bet on yourself? That and more when Inspiration for the Nation continues right here, Power 620. Welcome back, George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. Wrapping up our conversation with Arel Moodie. ArelMoodie.com, by the way. He's the co-founder of Profound Mastermind. What about those applications, by the way? We'll get to that a little bit later. But how do you bet on you? How do you jump? So I'm a hybrid entrepreneur. which means, I still got paycheck or the guarantee, if you will. I don't even know how guaranteed that is. But anyway, got that, right? And I was talking to some friends and people who have jumped. I know somebody I just talked to the other day jumped. They took the leap of faith. Steve Harvey talks about jump. Barbara Cochran of Shark Tank talks about jump, and you'll figure it out on the way down. When you think about that and the leap you had to take for yourself, how do you bet on Arel? How does George bet on George?
I think I'm going to give advice that might be contrarian. It doesn't mean that mine is right. It doesn't mean someone else.
We're talking to you, so it's your advice.
This is literally just my opinion. I think when the jump is because you have forward momentum towards said goal, right? I know a lot of people who go, "Yo, I got a dream of running, my own business. So I'm gonna leave my job and take on this facility that's got $5,500 a month in rent, and that's not even covering everything else. And I got $20,000 in my bank account, but I got to jump." I would go, "It's not a good time to jump, man. That's not a good time to jump, because what's going to happen is you're going to be in such a state of lack that you're going to be frantic and you're going to make lots of really poor decisions. The time to jump is when the momentum that you've been putting in on your part-time or your hybrid or your side, right, starts becoming so almost like, yo, I have to jump. And now if I jump now, yeah, it's not fully stable. It's not like this is giving me, but all of the signs are pointing, like people are contacting me, things are working. So I think what we have to do is build up either on the side or, and this is kind of, advice that's hard to practice, but is it's practically very valuable. It's actually to work with or work for someone doing the thing that you want to do. I've actually found jumping by yourself, you're jumping into a world of unknown. But let's say you have a business partner, or let's say you could work with someone who is doing the thing you want to do, but they're at this level and you need to just start here. Well, then you're learning from their mistakes, what works, what doesn't. So when you do jump, you're not jumping into a sea of unknowingness. You're jumping into a little bit of murkiness, which is different in my mind. So though I think jumping and building the parachute on the way out is valuable, I think jumping into murky water where it's like, I know how to navigate that water. I can see enough in it. And I think you either A, have to say, do I already have enough experience and I just don't trust myself? Well, then jump. Or B, do I need to gain that experience, and do I need to humble myself and maybe partner with someone or work for someone so I can learn those skills in the real world? Because I genuinely believe there are certain things books can teach you, and there's certain things only life can teach you. So you've got to live it versus just read. You can read 40. I know people who read 50 books on how to start a business, but it ain't nothing like starting a business. So maybe you work with a startup, or you work, and it's very different when you're working and seeing someone else make mistakes, because it's easy to be like, they should do it this way. Oh, I love how they're doing it this way. So when you do jump, it's murky water, not unknown water, which is still dangerous, but navigatable.
How do you process failure, Arel? What when you fail, which is the only way to succeed, right? Yeah. But how do you process failure and get up from the knockout? Because sometimes it's a knockout punch. And I say that in the context of all that comes with that, the mental health stress, the back to the health in your body, and what we do to ourselves when the thing doesn't work. Yeah.
Someone shared this with me, and it has stayed with me about failure, is that, and it's like one of those phrases that is almost a little cheesy, but it works, is that, failure is not final until you make it final. So people say, yo, I failed. I started and I have to shut this business down. Well, did you fail? And what I mean by that is, my dad told me when I was younger, if you wake up and you don't have white chalk outlined along your body, it's a good day. right?
Right.
So yeah, maybe it didn't go as fast as you wanted it to. Yeah, maybe you messed up, but it's not really failure. So I'll give some examples. Do you remember Chris Brown was untouchable way back in the day when he went through his Rihanna challenges?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But you know what he did? He kept making music. And you know what happened? When he first, like the first year or two when he made music, nobody was feeling him. But he kept making hits. And he didn't hurt nobody no more. He didn't hit nobody no more. So I can't say what he did was right. I'm not advocating that in any way. What I'm saying is he went to a place that he should have been canceled, but he just consistently kept banging out hits. And you know what? The world forgave him. May not have forgotten, but forgave, right? You take Robert Downey Jr. Do you remember him in the 90s? Dude was in and out of jail.
And
like
one
of one of the most drug-ridden, and then he went on to become Iron Man. Why? Because he didn't give up. So what you actually find is that when you tap out and say, hey, I failed, it's over, it's final. That's really failure. But if you can actually take a knee and go, yeah, I messed up and I'll get back up. If anyone ever needs the greatest thing to listen to in failure, look up the scene from I think it was the last Rocky movie. I think it was called Balboa. And it's the scene where Rocky is talking to his son. And it's one of the greatest speeches about failure that I've ever heard in my life. And one of the phrases that he says that I repeat in my head when I deal with failure is, life is not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. And I mean, that's a verbatim quote from the movie because I've listened to it that many times. So when I'm in my deepest fears, my deepest trenches, I go to that scene because I go, it's not the fact that I got hit. It's the fact that I got hit and I'm going to keep moving forward. And I think that is the foundational core. Do you cry? Yes. Do you whimper? Yes. Do you put yourself in a fetal position and put, sad R&B Drake on? Yes. And then you remember, this isn't who I really am. And then you get up because that's how winning is done.
You have a partner. I have a partner. We wives in our cases.
Yes.
The importance and how does that fit into your drive? You could say I'm doing it for them or whatever, but how important is it for what you're seeking to have that be in alignment with that partner or not? Because sometimes that success, I think about some of these folk, they didn't have that with their partner. They're on the third marriage, and that's where the success is. That's not what you and I are trying to do, nor are we going to do that. So how do you manage the relationship as you're building?
Yeah.
I think that's important for you to address.
I think your life partner is the single greatest, most important decision you could ever make in your life, period. You can make a lot of money, and if you're not happy when you come home, you feel poor. And you could make little money, but when you come home and you're happy, you feel rich. It is the single most important relationship. I think that marriage is God's growth mechanism. Nothing will make you grow as a human than dealing with someone who will literally be in your life, whether you want, think about almost every other relationship. If you don't like your brother or your sister or your friend, you can get space from them. Your spouse, your partner, they there. So you gonna have to figure it out. So one, I think you've got to choose very, very wisely. And number two, when it does get hard, you've got to ask yourself, am I on their team and then they are on my team? I think the simplest way to create great partnerships is to be on that person's team and for them to be on yours. If you don't have that, no relationship will weather the storm. But if you're like, yo, he or she is on my team and I am on their team and we are riding together, every storm is weatherable. Every challenge is weatherable. So you need to have a great partner. And I would argue that depending upon your philosophical view towards partnerships, marriage, relationships, whatever it might be, I believe that if you put your energy in that and make that win, it's almost a guaranteed win in other areas. Now, keep in mind, there's lots of people who go through divorce. It's nothing like that's life. Lots of people, like 60% of us go through divorce. The key is to not take the mistakes from our past relationship and bring it into the present. And most of that revolves self-reflection. It's not this person. I'm sure the person might have not been a great person, but what did I bring that could be like perfected in the next one? And then maybe it takes 3. If it takes me 8 years to graduate college, I still got my college degree. If it takes you 3 marriages to get to the perfect like marriage for you, like celebrate that, not the failures, but the fact that you got there and you learned the lessons you need to learn.
I love it. I guess it to close out your best year yet, 2023. Smarter versus harder, or is it a combination of both? In terms of, because you always hear people say work smarter, not harder, but you got to work hard to work smart. So
yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of hard work, man. You know, I think it's actually maybe more about better leverage than smarter. You know, sometimes it's not smarter, maybe it's just leveraged work, right? So, you know, I am a big believer in you got to grind and like even think about anything you've ever done that was supposed to be easy peasy. Like, oh, I'm gonna do this real quick. It's never real quick.
Never real quick. Listen,
I'm gonna edit this video real quick. It's never real quick.
Never.
It's never real quick.
Even if it's one thing, you're like, well, I didn't know that was gonna take an hour to do it. You know?
Let me put this email together real quick and send it. And then it's like, why did that take 25 minutes? That in my head, I predicted it to be in 3. So like, I'm a big believer in hard work, but there's a couple of like limitations to just hard work and a couple of limitations just smart work. One of those limitations is, are you playing in the right sandpit? Meaning, you could be working really hard, but you work at McDonald's and you work at Burger King and you work at Taco Bell. It doesn't matter how hard you work. You're only going to make whatever the hourly wage is. So you're working 3 jobs. So someone who works 3 fast food jobs isn't working less hard than Jeff Bezos is. They're both working very hard. It's that they're in a sandpit that's not going to give them the fruits that Jeff Bezos's hard work would. So one is, well, what space am I in? If I'm in a salary job, it doesn't matter how hard I work, that salary is a salary. So all you can hope for is that gets ascended. There's an ascension to like a better position, a higher pay over time. If you create entrepreneurship, if you're a hairdresser, there's so many heads you could dress in a day. So there's a limitation to how far you could go. So you either have to say, I'm happy with it, or I've got to figure out these other things I can leverage, maybe another booth in my space, maybe selling products instead of just doing the hair and shampoo. So you've got to leverage what you're doing. But a lot of times it's not how hard you work, because a really talented person could work hard in a space that just won't bear fruit. So you've got to leverage it and play in the right sandpit.
All right. So in summary, Arel, let's summarize what we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, just to remind folks what they have to do to have their best year yet in 2023.
So the odds are you might be listening to this in your car, or listening to this on a run, or when you're doing, some type of chore. This is the most important thing to remember. Go into the future a year, no more than a year. Go into the future a year. Look back on what would have to happen to make this the best year yet. Feel the actual feelings you achieved it. And then ask yourself, what did I do to make this feeling real? Every time you revisit the goal, you revisit it as if it's already happened in the future, and you're trying to bring your present self in collision with your future self. You got to work hard. You got to work leveraged. And you've got to work with a knowledge that sometimes when the tide is moving in your direction, you do have to jump, but do it once there's momentum, not at the very beginning. And I think if you do that one thing alone, and you choose at most 3 things to work on this year, it'll be your best year yet. No question.
ArelMoodie.com. Watch him on Disney Plus. It's the name of the show is called
Family Reboot.
and ArelMoodie.com, Arel Moodie on all the platforms. The brother is doing some great things, and spend some time with us so that you and I and Arel too can have your best year yet. Happy New Year to all of you. 2023 is on and popping. This is Inspiration for the Nation.